Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy schedule to attend this important session. My name is Suzanne Patterson, and I'm the Director of Finance and International Programs at the Institute of Public Administration of Canada, or IPAC as we're better known. With participants joining virtually from coast to coast, we acknowledge and respect the ancestral and unceded territories of all First Nations, Inuit, and Métis people. We encourage everyone here to take the opportunity to learn about the diverse and unique histories, cultures, and aspirations of the peoples on whose territories you work and live, and determine how you can take action towards reconciliation. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to today's event, Addressing Canada's Housing Supply Challenges, Skilled Trades Workforce Shortage. The topic of today's webinar is and will be important to all levels of government across Canada. The national housing crisis represents one of Canada's greatest social and economic challenges. Simply put, Canada doesn't have enough skilled tradespeople to build its way out of our current housing shortage. Today's speakers will focus on strategies to attract, retain, and hire skilled trade workers. These efforts are crucial for building a robust workforce capable of meeting the pressures of the growing housing pipeline. Canada's current and impending gap in skilled trades is becoming more tangible. With over 700,000 licensed trades expected to retire by 2028, it has become an urgent matter to ensure the current and next wave of workers are being introduced to a rewarding career in the skilled trades. These experts will share their invaluable insights and perspectives, aiming to engage you in discussions about how we can improve incentives, policies, and approaches to meet the labor market needs and increase the housing supply that is essential to Canadians. I'd now like to introduce you to our moderator, Deanna Veltri, Senior Manager, Public Sector Transformation, Deloitte Canada. Before I turn it over to Deanna, I'd like to remind audience members to send in their questions using the Q&A function located at the bottom of your screen. We've allocated about the last 10 minutes of the hour to answer any questions that you might have, so please reserve your questions until the end. Over to you, Deanna.
Thank you, Suzanne. Appreciate that introduction, and also thank everyone for being here today, especially over your lunch hour. We're really excited to continue this discussion about key topics facing Canada as we grapple with what we're all calling a housing crisis. So as Suzanne mentioned, my name is Deanna Veltri, and I'm part of a wonderful team at Deloitte Canada working to have an impact on those housing policy and program challenges we are collectively facing today. And as part of hoping to support that quickly evolving discourse, this panel is our fourth time convening alongside IPAC to discuss important issues facing the sector, public and private alike. With every session, we're trying to tackle a unique angle or perspective on our housing supply challenges in Canada and talk about real tangible solutions, as Suzanne mentioned. And that brings me to today's topic. I'm going to share a couple statistics with you to ground us, and then we're going to get into our discussion. As Suzanne mentioned, 700,000 is the number of licensed trades expected to retire by 2028. 250,000, that's the expected gap in skilled trades workers that we'll be left with by 2029. So once that retirement wave concludes. 28 is about the average age of a skilled trades apprentice, despite being a career that can begin in the final years of high school. And that looming 3.87 million, the number of houses we're told we need to construct to get out of this severe deficit of supply that we are collectively calling a crisis. Homes need to be built, and by and large, we know that skilled trades are the people to do it. That said, we're facing challenges right now and in the long term when it comes to bolstering this workforce. Right now, high costs of construction and rising delays in project starts mean work can be uncertain for the workers of today. Looking months and years into the future with those statistics I just mentioned, when construction supply inevitably increases, we may not have the labor to keep up. And that's what I want to talk through today. And luckily for us, I think we have two really well-positioned, solution-oriented thinkers to take us through some of those solutions and talk through what we can do collectively to make headway. So I'll introduce them both by name only because they will introduce themselves further in a moment. I'll start by thanking them again for making time to be here with us today. First, we have Dave Wilkes, the CEO of the Building Industry Land and Development Association for the GTA. And we have Michael Braithwaite, the CEO of Blue Door. I know both of these people personally and know firsthand they are great speakers, and they are currently thinking through that collision of our skilled trade shortage and our housing supply challenges and what that's looking like. So I think we are very well positioned to learn about some fantastic solutions today. And as I look at that chat, we have representation from across the country. So excited to see what we can figure out for the entire country. Michael, I would love to hand it over to you first to introduce yourself. You wear a number of very interesting hats in your work that are very relevant to our discussion today. So tell us about you and what you're seeing and attempting to navigate when it comes to our skilled trade workforce and Canada's housing crisis.
Thank you so much, Deanna. So my name is Michael Braithwaite, and I have the absolute honor and pleasure of being the CEO of a great team at Blue Door. So Blue Door is an organization that's been around for about 42 years with a primary goal of supporting our most vulnerable. We support them by trying to find supportive and affordable housing, trying to get them health care so they can keep that housing, and help them find meaningful, well-paying employment that breaks the cycle of poverty. And it's that last piece that kind of links into the trades as well. About 4 years ago, we were talking with some colleagues at LiUNA 506. They were talking about the need for people, and they were saying they were having a difficult time on the social side of things, getting people into pre-apprenticeship programs and into apprenticeships. And maybe there was a match with Blue Door. And Blue Door was really looking for something that would actually stop the cycle of poverty. Sometimes when we were putting people in employment programs in the past, because they were not paying a living wage and they didn't have a lot of meaning in the work, I would just frustrate people, right? So we were looking for something that break the cycle of poverty, where there is a huge need gap, as there is in the trades, was meaningful work. I mean, how many of us can point at something and say, hey, I built that, I did the rebar on that, I did the concrete pouring on that, that kind of thing, and would actually allow them to afford the housing supply that's out there. So it's actually a homelessness prevention program in the sense that if you enter a program which wraps supports around you, so whether it be childcare, rent supports, transportation supports, mental health supports, anything like that, you will, if you're experiencing homelessness, it will be short-lived because we'll help you find housing and you'll be able to afford market housing that's out there. And you know, if you're on the verge of that, we're going to stop that from happening. So it prevents people from experiencing homelessness or makes that experience of homelessness really, really short. And so we work primarily in York region, so just above Toronto. We run this program called Construct that I was speaking to, our trades program, with Durham College in Durham and with Humber College in Peel. So we've branched out and are looking to scale across the country. Since we started 4 years ago, just as the pandemic set in, we have put close to 500 people into the trades and into careers that have broken the cycle of poverty. And so we're always looking at innovative ways to house people, to support people, to access the market housing that's there. We also do a bunch of other things. We started a Housing for All Land Trust to acquire housing and keep it deeply affordable and supportive in perpetuity. We've got another program that helps people build equity while paying 30% of market rent, so they have equity moving forward, and much, much more. So really innovative and different. I believe, you know, if we do what we did, we get what we got, right? You have to think differently. You have to take some risks, a pile of things, and try a bunch of different things. And this construction social enterprise that we've worked at has been really well received from the trades community. It's been supported, and it's kind of a win-win-win for everyone involved.
Fantastic, Michael. And we're going to pull on some of those threads through our fireside chat in a few minutes, but very exciting, very relevant pulse you have on the sectors that are relevant to this discussion. So thanks for being here. Dave, in your role, you work to be the voice of the GTA construction industry. Tell us more about what you and your industry is feeling right now, navigating this collision of pressures between housing supply targets, high costs of construction, and the skilled trade environment we just discussed.
Yeah, thank you, Deanna. And Michael, it's always a pleasure to join you on a panel. I was joking earlier that Michael certainly wins the shirt contest today. I feel very boring here. So I'd like to use this opportunity, and with apologies to our colleagues across the country from a Toronto-centric perspective, which is what our responsibilities are with Build. We're certainly part of the Canadian Home Builders Association family, and we do a lot of work at all three levels of government to address the housing crisis. But I will caution folks that the perspective that I bring and the work that Build does on a day-to-day basis is from that perspective, the GTA. But I think the issues we face in this region of our country are not dissimilar to regions across the country. They may vary with intensity given specifics across the country and the type of housing needs. Each market is unique in and of its own. But I just want to offer that caution, Deanna, before I offered my perspective. And I would also like to take a bit of a step backwards and look at some of the challenges that we're seeing in the housing industry beyond labor, because I think labor is one component of it. Looking for where land that is designated for growth. So where is the population needs of whatever community you're in going to live in the future? What is density going to look like? How does change come to existing and new neighborhoods if you're looking at growing in a greenfield area? That's one area, and one area where I think, you know, folks that work in the industry and those in the public service serving the housing industry really need to have a clear conversation around. How do we speed up approvals for housing? We have a stat at Build that it takes 10 to 11 years for a project to from start to finish. That's just simply too long with the housing needs that we have based on the population population growth that we anticipate in the country. What are the costs associated with housing? There's three big costs. Land, which links to the first point. If you have a restriction on land and you're not designating areas for growth, that's going to drive up the cost. Materials, whether that be construction materials and labor, which I will get to, and government fees and taxes. And from a GTA perspective, government fees and taxes in total, federal, provincial, municipal, add up to about 30% of the cost for a new home. So what I really think we need, and include labor in that, is a very important national conversation on how we are going to accommodate the growth we are anticipating in this country and house those folks in a respectful and appropriate way based on individual regions and cities' needs. So in my mind, point one, Deanna, is we need an urgent national conversation around housing. Yep. And as I look particularly at labor, there's two issues that I see that I'm looking forward to discussing today. There's a short-term one. I don't think it's any secret that the housing market, particularly in the GTA, has stalled. Sales just have really ground to a halt. We have sales numbers that we haven't seen. They're historically low. The challenge that is that there's just not activity happening. And, the union halls, as we like to say, are filling up. There is a risk of people leaving the industry as they look for work. And so that is a real short-term challenge that we need to get to. And we need to get this sector stimulated again, and houses being built and condos being built and rental apartments being built in order that we can offer meaningful work for those people that have the skills. And then the bigger issue, which is the more structural one that you mentioned, we have a lot of people that are aging out of the sector. You quoted the numbers, I won't repeat them. And we really need to look hard at how we replace those folks that we rely on to build the housing. And I think the bigger conversation that we also need to have is a productivity one. A colleague of mine, tells a story. If you took a pilot from 40 years ago and put them in a cockpit now, they wouldn't even know where to turn the on switch on. You took a bricklayer from 40 years ago, they'd still know how to build a house, right? So I think part of the conversation we have to have is a productivity one, and what role does innovation and productivity play in order to fulfill the housing needs we have? So if I summarize, labor is one component. Land, approvals, cost to build, including government fees and taxes, are the other pieces of that pie. And we have a short-term one, which we need to get back to building in order to keep the people we have. And then we have a longer-term issue that must be solved in a variety of ways, including on looking around innovation and productivity, which gets me back to where I started, which is why I really do believe we need an urgent national conversation on how we provide enough housing for the people that want to call Canada home.
Yeah.
I don't think I ever introduced myself, though. So, as I said, Dave Wilkes, President and CEO of Build. We do represent the building industry in the GTA, so low-rise builders, high-rise professional renovators, and those that service the industry. We probably have about 1,100 members strong. And you're right, our primary role is to be an advocate and the voice of the industry. So pardon me for not doing that up front.
That's okay. I think it became very clear through your opening remarks in the best possible way, Dave. That was a great intro and a good dovetail into our fireside discussion or question and answer. Like I've said to you both before, I may aim a question at one of you. Please both comment if you feel like that's relevant, and there'll be some that are kind of open-ended for both of you to comment on. And I will preface to say we've got some good questions floating in as well that we will answer towards the end. So Dave, let's continue on with your comments, because towards the end, once you kind of gave us a sense of the different pieces of the challenge, you started to talk about the conversations we need to have or the solutions we need to get to. So what are some of those solutions, those opportunities we have to help? IPAC's membership, we have a lot of the public service on the line. What kind of services and programs could help maintain that labor force today or deal with that short-term challenge and then think long-term?
Yeah, so I think, from the short term, addressing all those key points that I talked about, having that conversation, if I summarize it, it's providing certainty for the housing industry. It takes a lot of capital to develop housing. And so any industry that's capital intensive, those funds flee uncertainty. So we need certainty in the rules around housing. We need certainty on how long it's going to take to get shovels in the ground. And we need certainty as to where growth is going to occur. So I would encourage our colleagues from the public sector that certainty is required, and recognizing we're competing for capital on an international basis, right? Whether it's pension funds or private capital or whatnot, we are competing in that global nature. So that would be point one. And on the labor, and we've seen the federal government move in this direction. Our immigration system, we used to have a system, a point system, which was tailored to skilled trades, and making sure that we're an attractive place for skilled trades to come. But I don't think it can just be skilled trades. It also needs to be those that are working in the construction sector, because we need all types of individuals in order to build the homes that we need. So without going on too long here, certainty on where, when, and how housing gets built, and a recognition that we can't possibly replace the labor that we need domestically. Although that will be part of the solution, we need an immigration system, as the federal government has committed to do, tailored to both skilled and general trades within the construction industry. Innovation is part of it as well, but I'll leave that for another question.
Absolutely. We'll talk about that. Michael, I'm going to pose a question to you. You started to talk a little bit about this, but I very much believe that the organization that you have, Construct, this social enterprise, trades-based, construction-based, as you mentioned, has a ton of potential to be part of the solution from multiple angles. So tell us a little bit more about how the public sector can help, or how we can help deepen and scale the capabilities you have, as you described in your opening comments. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, I think that like our construction program, I've been in the social service field for 30 years, and this program has really just taken off. It's been very successful because it fulfills a lot of different needs. We desperately need people, and so we were successful going through. And where it came from too is that people can go directly into apprenticeships, but as I'm sure Dr. would probably agree, sometimes, if they're not fully formed, what our program does is it really gives them experience on a work site. It gives them some qualifications around working from heights, and it pays them and gives them a real feel. So when they actually land in apprenticeships, they're fully formed in a sense that you're ready to go. You know what this is going to be like. We don't actually train them in any kind of a trade because we don't train them well, right? I mean, that's for them to learn. That's part of the apprenticeship piece. They have general ideas around how to swing a hammer and tape measure, that kind of thing. But it's just general, and they decide. And we have different people from the trades come in and speak to them, and they kind of decide what path they want to take, right? Moving forward. But they're ready to roll. They've got a set of tools. They've got all the equipment. We pay for all that, and all the kind of fees and those pieces. But we don't do anything really without the thought of larger impact, right? So say like to service providers, this idea that we have that we are looking, it's called construct. There's two pieces to it. There's the training piece. We also have a full-scale construction company too that does renovations to homes and full basements. We've got it a whole house for affordable housing. And that revenue comes back into Blue Door so that we can build the housing that we need, or we can add different positions. But the idea that this program actually could be self-sufficient without government funding, because right now we have funding from the provincial and federal governments, also privately from the Home Depot Foundation, right? But it actually could be self-sustaining over time with the revenue that comes in from the construction piece. And we have that social good. So when we're bidding on jobs, we're doing the exact same quality of work for the same price, but you get the social good that anywhere from 10, depending on the size of the job, 10 to 50 people are going to come on that work site, get a feel for that, and be prevented from experiencing homelessness. You don't pay for any of that. Why would you not, right? And so it really fits the community benefits model. And so there's a lot of work to be done, and it's a great story to tell with multiple wins. But it's also something that we're saying now to the federal government that, hey, let's take this across the country. Now, I think you have to be careful with scaling always to try and say it fit in this community. As David said, like this is GTA, but it may not be exactly. So what we're saying is we're not scaling it. We're kind of looking at more of an accreditation model where a nonprofit organization would take this on. Here's the fully formed, we'd go and train, and you'd run construct in Calgary or construct in Victoria or construct in Halifax, right? And do it there to scale up that impact, right? So instead of putting a couple hundred people in the trades per year across the country, we could put a couple thousand people into the trades as well. And that's the idea behind everything that we do is, hey, we started in New York, and then we work with the colleges, Durham and Humber, and have scaled it out across the top of the GTA. There's others that do this too. And we built, for the Home Depot, we built a program called TradeWorks, where there's 10 others across the country doing similar work. The Home Depot helps to fund that and provides people with funding to do that. And just for that impact statement, now they can say they're putting hundreds of people into the trades and preventing them from experiencing homelessness too, right? And it just kind of builds that case where you have different funding mechanisms coming in, and we can bring that as we look to scale this across the country. So the solution's there, right? We just have to, and for minimal cost, we can take this and duplicate it across the country, and each community will have its own flavor. So I think that's part of the solution too. If we're just doing it on this minute scale, we're just kind of kicking at the edges. But if we actually do it in many different communities, we'll have a real big impact and get the workforce we need to make it, to create the actual housing we need, both deeply affordable and affordable in the future.
Hey, Deanna, can I ask Michael a question? I know I should. I'm not.
Go ahead.
Michael, you just made me think. We also partner with Home Depot in a different way, right? Which is what your question was. Your comment that spurred my question. Do you see, what do you need from industry that you don't have? And what I'm thinking of in particular is, as I mentioned at the top, we represent the professional renovator industry as well through our Renomark program. If you were challenging our industry to be part of that solution, which I find a very important one, how would you challenge us to be part of that solution?
It's a great question, David. And here's what I'll say. So I think a lot of the people coming through our program, which makes it a little unique, is you'll have newcomers coming through. It gives them a great start, right? Because we know working in the trades is an awesome job, right? You get paid really well, and that's going to continue to grow as your experience grows. It's really rewarding. You can take it anywhere across the country, right? And so we've got vulnerable populations coming in. We've put through youth members from the 2S LGBTQ plus community, Black and Indigenous come through the program. Women escaping violence. We've got a full cohort there. And I say for the industry has said, hey, look, we know we have to get more diverse. But it's more than saying it. You have to really make bigger efforts to accept and promote and be ready, in a sense, David, if that makes sense. So we're going to do this, but we don't want to actually put people through if you're not going to, be ready to do that, have the policies and pieces in place. So when people do come through and start on this path, that they do feel accepted and welcome and safe. And not for all employers. This is just, I always kid that, like when I was in Prince Edward Island a few years back, and they were really proud of, and they should be, that they had, I think, welcomed 10,000 newcomers into PA. But they didn't really want to change anything. They wanted to change, but not change anything they did. So it was called, we're friendly, but we're not friends, right? So you got to be friends, right? So you really do. You have to want to change, but you have to take some strides. So I think bigger strides have to be taken. Some small ones have, small steps. If we're really going to diversify and welcome all these new and diverse groups into construction industries as they want, you got to really, make sure that when they arrive, that it's set up to do so. And I think the other pieces too are just the community benefits piece, that if every project or big project we worked on, if we gave a certain percentage of that to groups like Construct to do, although they've got to deliver, that money goes back into your community, into these types of programs. So what a winning story it is for everyone, every hospital, every highway, every project built. I think that could be a real win.
Yeah, and a build, we have a diversity, equity, and inclusion pledge that our members have signed, and I think part of that is obviously folks within your company and ensuring that we respect the differences and understand the differences that each individual person brings to the table. But working with an organization such as yours to welcome more diverse people into the industry would be great. And as you pointed off at the top of the conversation, Deanna, we need folks, period. And so this would be making sure everybody feels welcome would be an important task that we take. Sorry for the diversion, but I always like to understand how we can be part of the solution.
Not a diversion. This is totally a conversation, and I'm here to get you guys talking. So talk directly to each other. I am totally cool with that. That works for me 100%. So you just spoke to, Dave, the comment of we just need folks, and a few of those threads came out in the conversation we just had about, trades as a career. I saw a survey somewhere that about 75% of Canadians, and it was recent, last couple of years, would not pursue a career in the skilled trades. It didn't say why, it didn't go that far. So I'd love to hear from your perspective. What do you think's driving that? Is it that they don't want to? Is it that they won't? How do we get people in the trades in the way that we were just describing? What can we do? That's to both of you.
That is a very good question. And it's a question, as Michael said, that's not based on potential earnings, because they're incredibly well-paying jobs.
Yes.
It's a question whose answer is not based on fulfillment of work. Because I don't know about you, but when I leave my desk, I think, okay, I send a whole bunch of emails. I hit the F key on my keyboard 3,000 times, whatever. That's it. The work that folks on this call and in the audience does is fulfilling in a different way. I don't want to diminish what we all do for them, but you can't turn around and look and say I built that, right? And then so it can't be that. And what I think it must be, and this is a challenge we have as a society, and I look at it in my own role as, my daughter. I didn't encourage her to become a tradesperson. I encouraged her to become whatever she chose to become. But it's very interesting that the the value of the jobs that we and the conversations that we have within our education system and broader than that don't reflect the contributions that the jobs make to our communities, building stuff, and the money you can earn, because you can earn a very good salary as a skilled trade.
Absolutely.
So to me, I don't know the answer to the question, but I know it lies in the root of perception on the worth of the job, not on the other areas. And that's a big deal. So I think we have a responsibility as leaders within, you know, the sectors that Michael and I represent, the public service, to have a different conversation. So, you know, how do we change that other than doing it recognizing that we're part of that solution? So, so that's not a very good answer, and I do like to be solution oriented, but I know what it isn't, and I do believe it's a challenge that we don't value the jobs enough and encourage people to go in that direction.
Yeah, absolutely. Michael.
Michael, are you smarter than me on this one?
No, listen, I mean, this is not like, here's how to do it, but I think with anything, with homelessness, with trades, with whatever, when you're looking at problems, I think you have to always work upstream, right? So where do you start? And I think that has to start even in schools in grade 7 and 8. When I look at my own experience in school, university, like that, just audio learning to me was, because I can't sit still, right? It was tough. And I was much better hands-on learner. But yeah, and I saw in the chat there, like the stigma that way with trades, right? That was if you can't cut it academically, and so that shame or whatever. But I think, like as you said, I mean, I look at right now, not to shame academics, awesome, go to school. But if you said to your kid, hey, you know, at 18, instead of, if that's not, if you like, there's so many kids that through pressure and like peer pressure, whatever, say, I'm going to go to university or college. I have no idea what I really want to do. They spend thousands of dollars, hundreds of thousands of dollars on education, and then are still stuck and go back to school where, you know, if you go through the like 4 years, a couple of years of the trades, right? And you're bringing in to start 60, 70, 80, depending on the trade, right, that you go through. And people see that it's a solid profession can do that. So, I mean, it needs a facelift of a marketing piece, but I think if you work upstream in the schools so that teachers, guidance counselors, and others are saying, hey, you should really consider this. You love to build stuff. You love to do that. And I think also, like, if you ask most people, me included, and Dave, you'd have way more, like, name 5 trades. They're going to name, you know, plumber, electrician, whatever. Like there's so many trades and there's so many cool and innovative things you never even think of. There's jobs where you don't really get dirty at all. It's all technology. There's 3D printing houses where you work in an iPad. Like that's, you know, there's technology, different things. And like there's just so many, but we don't talk about it. And that should start in the schools at an early age. Work upstream, grade 7 and 8, get people to start thinking about this and on that. And I know the school boards are doing some awesome work to start doing that and to really give a different path for people of success. We've seen that people have been beaten down that come into our program. They're beaten down by the education system or just life or different things. They failed out of school or they've succeeded at school and still can't find a path forward, that go into the trades and then say, why didn't I do this, 15 years ago, right? This was a perfect fit.
That's right.
Yeah. And I don't want to leave the impression, Deanna, that, there's a negative impression of trades. I just think that I'm sharing with the audience my own experience here, right? It's just, we need to recognize that, I just think of the people I talk to every day, who have kids. So where are you going to school? I don't say, what trade are you focusing on, right? And so it's not because, I marvel at what electricians and plumbers and the work and the value of the provide. I just think that we just need to change the conversation, because as you see in the chat, there's lots of countries where that conversation has been changed. I just think from a Canadian perspective, we need to do so. So I think part of it is just having a different conversation.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I think that's where your comments were, Dave, right? Like, it's just how do we evolve that conversation? And it got me thinking, the quick follow-up I have on this, and we spoke a little bit about it. who are the partners? We talked about schools, for sure. You've both identified your organizations and where you sit as part of that solution. When we think as far upstream as we can, Michael, Dave, like who else should be part of socializing and changing that mindset or permeating the discourse a little bit on trades?
Michael?
Well, I mean, I think it starts with the trades themselves, right? In that marketing piece, how do you market that, and you market some of the success, and that, you know, for people to feel really that sense of pride when you say my son, daughter, my child's a doctor, like is you know, a carpenter, electrician. That's incredible, right? Like to go that route and what they can achieve in doing that. So it starts there. Of course, different, you know, all levels of government doing that, social services as well, and newcomer services too, to really kind of pump that up. So I think you have all sorts of different, and I think, you know, you always look for your usual partners, but look for the kind of unusual partners that can support even, you know, when usually maybe a first place that someone might visit when they come into the country too is they visit banks, right, to get things set up. And as they're looking at their financial future, you know, banks had more information, so it could kind of guide them to programs like our construct or different pieces where, hey, you know, here's a real need. This is going to set you up well into the future. So I think that you also look for those private partners to pump these things up to and invest, because when you do that, when people have great paying jobs and they can afford the housing that's out there, everyone benefits, right?
That's right.
Our economy, our country really benefits, and it's a better place to live.
Yeah, I would add, you know, there's lots of people that can play a role. Our education system, the old chestnut, that you know, making sure people understand all the options that they have. Leadership throughout the community, wherever that may be, from a political, industry, you know, community groups, making sure people are aware of the opportunities. And what I think, you know, one of the responsibilities that we all have is demystifying the jobs of trade. Right. And as I said, I've been monitoring the chat, and they've been demystified elsewhere. So just understanding what that looks like. Our friends in the labor movement, huge opportunity as well, that I think we can partner and understand. And they do a lot of that stuff. I love your idea, Michael, around banks. I think putting, you know, tradespeople around, you know, this is my lived experience. So I think this has to be as broad a conversation as we can have around that, and the partners are only limited by our imagination, but the message needs to be that one around demystification. So this is a lot of apple pie type ideas from me, but I do think we have three solutions to this. We need to attract more people that have the skills that we need to build the housing, and we need to recognize and their skills and look at, you know, making sure that we minimize the hoops that people have to go through when they're transferring their skills from one country to another, and looking at streamlining that certification. We have to you know, our population isn't growing domestically, which is why we need the immigration. So this is not going to be a domestic solution where even, you know, we just don't have enough people. We don't have enough young people but we need to make sure, as young people are looking at their career choices, that this is one of them. And then, as I've been saying, we need to innovate within the industry, or we're never going to. We can't simply build our way out of the challenges that we are facing. We need to build and innovate our way out of the housing challenges that we have. So those would be my my three big buckets.
It's fantastic. This is a really good discussion. And to tail on that a little bit and continue your comments, Dave, about sort of the impending challenge and what we're dealing with now. We just talked a little bit about starting early upstream, getting those conversations going as early as possible, and permeating that thinking about where your career could go, wherever you're at in your journey. What about this retirement wave that's now 4 years away? You know, that sounds like all of our journey people and all of our top, most trained, most ready to work talent, you know, are going to go probably quicker than we can obviously replace them, right? 250,000 person gap by 2029. What are your thoughts on that kind of short-term math How do we make sure you mentioned a little bit about immigration, so let's pull that thread. How do we get the talent we need now as well?
And I think it's worse than just the retirement. I think as the industry is in a current state of slowdown, there's no jobs. People are migrating out of the
Housing. Ugh.
when the industry, there's one thing that's for certain: the demand is going to be there in the long term for housing across Canada, and from my perspective, within the GTA. So we not only have folks retiring, but we have folks leaving the industry, and during the pandemic, people that worked in the restaurant industry moved to the construction industry because the construction industry was still working. Now that our industry is slowing down, where are they moving off to? And I'm not just talking about skilled trades. I'm talking about general trades as well.
Yes.
So yeah, we have a big gap coming that we cannot possibly fill by today's high school students, because it's
Yeah.
going to get us too much. And that's where I really think that, and I commend the federal government for doing so in the most recent housing plan, ensuring that the immigration system is tailored to attracting and incentivizing and encouraging the people that we need to fill the sector, because it's a real big short-term problem that we need a short-term solution for. And it's not the only solution, immigration, but it is certainly a very key part of that solution as well. And I know we'll get here too, but I also do believe, much like we've had, we had an auto industry strategy, we have an EV strategy, we've had a whatever strategy. I think we need a First Ministers Conference on housing and how we're going to get there, and that innovation that you keep hearing me itching to talk about. I think that's where we need to be as well. But yeah, the problem is bigger than just folks that are retiring.
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll get to innovation in a sec, Dave. So Michael, please go ahead.
I was going to say, like, listen, so we realized early on, just to what you're saying, is that our program's getting new people into the industry, which is wonderful, but it's not, it's that gap of, where someone says, hey, we've only got 4 people in the province that can build that staircase, right? And so you're going to have to wait. So it slows things down. And then we can't get, until we finish that, we can't get this other trade in to finish this, right? So the missing pieces. I was at a welcome center this morning where they're saying, listen, we've got people coming in from the Ukraine who ran their own construction companies who can't get in. And so it is the credentialing thing. And so what we want to do is we're going to partner with another group, and we're going to take our construction program and actually look at it differently. We've been in talks with the federal government of having people come in and actually work at our construction company for the amount of time and be paid the amount of time it takes for them to get their credentials verified. That way, now you've got months working in the Canadian environment, you're ready to go, and then finding them jobs to support that, a drain of talent that's going out, right? And so kind of everyone wins again. And can we do that? And there's an influx of people coming in. So I think we always have to be innovative and think differently. How do we do that? Plus, hey, guess what? Blue Door's construction team gets these brilliant people to work with us to build the housing we need, to do the jobs we need, to drive revenue in as non-government, to move things forward, and then take that again, prove it works, scale it across the country in different communities, right? So we just have to be creative and innovative in how we do that, because you're right, at the top end, we're losing those years of experience that we're not right now replacing, because we're replacing them with apprentices, right? So I think it's just doing something like that and proving it works, and working with partners, because we don't have all the referrals or answers or knowledge. Everyone has their little piece, and we come together and look to the federal government to actually, and I know they have dollars. I saw that in the chat too. They've been doing that. And I was talking to someone in nursing yesterday. They're saying it's working, right? The credentialing, it's working. We're seeing faster nurses coming in and filling that void. We can do the same thing in construction as part of the puzzle. But as Dave said, I mean, the gap's huge, right? That's always the puzzle too. And Dave, it's interesting, when we're saying, hey, we need tradespeople desperately, and then Leona was saying, well, we don't have any work right now, right? Because it's not just driven by that. It's driven by a lot of factors that Dave writes about all the time about, when interest rates are high, or there's different slowdowns and people are waiting to build, or different things happen that actually stops the jobs from happening. It will happen eventually, But if we put all these people through and then there's not work for them, as Dave was saying, like they'll leave the industry, right? So we've got to, it's tough. Sometimes it's just about timing, and Dave has much more knowledge on that than I do.
Yeah, and that scares the, you know what, out of me, that when the tap turns back on, we're gonna look around and say, where did all the people go? Right? And so, yeah, I mean, I said earlier, the union halls are full now. In the pandemic, they weren't, right? So it is, it is a big, and that's where I really think we have to look at opportunities where, as an industry and government, we can partner to stimulate housing in a way that addresses the overall affordability challenges that we're facing, and they're very acute within the GTA. And that's where I get to, as I said earlier, we have to look at new ways to finance growth. You know, the current model that we have just doesn't work anymore through development charges and other aspects like that. It's too high a cost. We have to look at, you know, bringing more land on in order to balance the need for demand and supply. Without that, we're not going to be able to build to a level where people can afford, particularly in a current high interest rate environment, but that will moderate. And if we don't take action urgently, people are going to leave the sector because they need to work. And right now, very little is getting built. And what really concerns me is we're seeing building that for housing that was sold in the pandemic when money was dirt cheap. The sales have stopped. And as I said at the beginning, to historic lows. The activity in 26 and 27 is going to be very slow. And then that will create the dynamic that Michael and I have been talking about, that we just won't have the folks there. So what are we doing now in order to try and make sure that we don't go into that valley in 26 and 27?
Yeah. And maybe that's my last question before we get to some of the questions from the group is, you know, like we all said, some money has been allocated federally towards figuring this out in the context of the housing challenge, $200 million, which is not a bad thing. I take that as a signal, you know, we need to think about it. We need to innovate. We need to figure this out. How should we be spending our time? How should government be spending that money if you were in their shoes? Dave, Michael, take that as your opening to talk a little bit about the innovation we need to spark in the sector, and talk to your audience about how we should be focusing our efforts.
There's innovation around the world that we need to make sure it comes to Canada. There's modular homes. There's 3D printing. I mean, it's unbelievable. That, you know, I was doing some reading recently on 3D printing, and let me just focus on that. It's literally a large printer that concrete flows through, and you get a house built in hours. I mean, it's phenomenal to me. So what do you do when you want to incent something? You change the tax system. So you tax what you don't want, is the old adage, and you incent what you do want. So providing, you know, increased capital costs reductions. I don't need to. I'm not a tax expert, but when we've incented change in other sectors, it creates that change. So make it so obvious that investments in the two examples that I've just provided work. You know, we've seen the federal government talk about standard plans for housing that they link to the accelerator fund. I think that's a good idea. We've seen the provincial government here in Ontario trying to develop a modular housing policy. But we got to get on with the job, and we got to use the tools that the public tools that we have through our tax system, and, you know, learn from when the auto industry was not performing to the degree that it is way back when we did the free trade agreement with the US and the auto pact was under challenge. I'm dating myself here. What did we do? We rallied around it and changed the way that the rules that govern content around autos were structured, and make sure that we have a thriving sector. And now we're investing in EV plants. So once again, using an Ontario example, we need to have that same conversation around modular and 3D building and the like, and really recognize that the tools we have to create that change. And to me, that is as or more important than ensuring we have the right number of skilled trades in place.
Yes.
Sorry, I got on my bully pulpit there.
It was great. It was perfectly on. So let me ask you, let us transition, if you both are okay, to some of the questions we have in the Q&A function. The chat has been lively. People are exchanging emails to exchange notes. I'm loving it. It's fantastic. So let me pose some of the questions we have here and our good pulls on some of the conversations we've started to have. So this question was posed as to Michael, but I think it's one that you're both positioned to answer. What are some strategies to consider to encourage more private or industry partnerships to promote skilled trades to youth who may not fill that workforce need immediately? So there was some context in this question about, getting in to grade 7 to 12 and getting that conversation happening early. How do we get both of your respective groups to partner on that?
Michael, you probably got more hands-on knowledge than that than me.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is not just when I think about, if you go to different meetings and everyone will talk about how they're not able to hire quick enough, like whether it's unionized or not, right? They just can't, or they're losing people to another competitor who's paying a couple of dollars more, et cetera, et cetera. So they have a lot of skin in the game in the sense that, should they be investing in marketers or other groups that could go in and talk to and work with the education system about educating on the skilled trades and the opportunities that are there, and putting some dollars kind of into that moving forward, right? Because it benefits everyone. And how are they going to get that? And also too, it's like I said, why we don't train people in a sense to, here's how you're going to do carpentry, because we do it wrong, right? And they know what's right. So if you want things to if you want different outcomes at the end, people to go into those fields, what are you willing to share and do to make that happen so people get on the right track for things? This is, if you're interested in doing something cool like 3D printing or whatever, here's the track. Here's what you're gonna have to take in high school and to get through and do that, whatever, so it is really investing in people to go out and share and bring that into schools or into different work fairs or different things like that, right? Where you actually are not just thinking kind of insular, but that external reach out to get what you want and kind of be the change you want to see, right, moving forward. And I think the private industry has to do that too, because they're losing people, and it's very, very competitive. People take people, and in this economy, right, people will jump for a few dollars more per hour to another employer. So what are you going to do to be part of the solution?
Yeah.
Job fairs, like there's some obvious solutions there, like you see university fairs where, you get lots and lots of high school folks there. Why don't you have a skilled trades fair, in the at the same time, right? Like we stream by societal bias, and I think we need to address that.
Yeah, absolutely, Dave. And it's funny, in that question, there were some comments about Ontario is doing some of those skilled trade job fairs at that younger age. But I like your comment about, we stream based on that societal bias. That's it's a heady question or a heady comment, but it's very, very true.
And I want to recognize my own ignorance. I don't know all the programs that are out there. I don't know what is being done. I mean, I'm
of course
recognizing the chat. There are co-ops, there are things, but what I do know is whatever we're doing, we need to do more of, because of the numbers of pending shortages and potential people leaving the industry. We're not doing enough, no matter what it is, and I think that's why we either need to do more of the same or augment it through new ideas.
Hey, I did want to add to, Dave, when you're talking about Indiana, you asked the question around where to put the money. And quickly, it is, listen, you see in the chat, you see we have the solutions, but we have to invest in scaling those, right? We're all chipping away at little things. If you invested in scaling some of those things, right? We'll talk about modular. Dave's like, modular. Everyone loves modular. The fact is, modular can't be the solution because we don't have enough modular builders to actually scale it up enough to make the housing that we need, right? So if you want that, if you see those solutions, invest in those solutions, scale them across the country, programs like Construct and schools that are doing it, all the things in the chat that people are saying, I'm doing this and we've seen great results, invest in those, scale those, and your impact will grow.
Yeah, and incent them, incent modular, right? So
that's right. Let it keep growing. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great way to kind of end our commentary, Michael and Dave, between the two of you. I took a lot away. There's many comments in the chat, so thank you all for continuing to comment and pose your questions. We're just running out of time. So let me summarize kind of what I'm hearing and where you kind of ended us. You know, we've got a big impending challenge. We've got one right in front of us in terms of the market, and we've got one kind of down the path that we need to get upstream and get ahead of. So we need to make sure people know about the trades, not just when they know, but everyone knows, and we're not streaming on those biases or taking away from the opportunity to create awareness about this career. We need to partner all the way upstream, downstream. So if you're talking early on in young people's lives, that conversation and the programs to support them will have to continue all the way until they're ready to be employed and get into employment. And we need to encourage and incent that innovation. What's innovative and what works? Sounds like we got a bit of both. Michael's comments, you know, we have people chipping away at this. We don't have to reinvent the wheel. Let's make those solutions whole and let them scale. And at the same time, as Dave said, you know, through that, we'll create the space to incentivize that innovation. And we'll find that kind of that beautiful solution where we're building enough housing and we're getting people employed and interested in staying in this career path. I have trades in my family, and once you know, it's a really rewarding, valuable, stable career. So with that, and with only 3 minutes to spare, I'll say my final thank yous to you, Michael and Dave. I think this was a really great back and forth and a great discourse. I think you answered a lot of the questions that were flowing in just by the conversation. So I thank you so much for being so solutions oriented. We're getting lots of claps in the emojis and hearts as we went along. So I think your comments are really resonating with folks, and that's fantastic. So with that, my final thank you to the audience, to the speakers, and to IPAC for another wonderful opportunity to talk about this crunchy topic. Suzanne, I will pass it back to you, I think, to close us out for today.
Thanks, Deanna. I'd like to thank everyone for attending this event and endorsing how critical this work is, creating a solution for Canada's housing challenges. I hope everyone's been energized and motivated by the session to continue to work towards solutions to this workforce and housing supply and affordability crisis. As well, I would like to thank Deloitte for their commitment and support for this issue and for the support that and for their support for the important work that IPAC does. Thank you very much. Have a great day.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.